Midweek Pictorial, May 27th, 1920. The overalls movement that has spread so widely over America and which, in connection with the old clothes movement, has doubtless done much to curb profiteering in clothing, has reached across the ocean and invaded London. Herewith are shown members of the staff of the Middle Classes Union in London arriving at their offices clothed in overalls. It will be noted that the women are not behind the men in this matter, as shown by their garments. Division of school children in the Social Democratic May Day demonstration in Berlin. They carry a banner which reads, "We demand a world school." Just what was meant by that the children probably did not know, and their carefree faces show that it did not weigh heavily upon them. The day in Berlin passed off without serious trouble on the part of the labor element. Concert outside the Reichstag building in Berlin, given on May 1st by members of the Musicians' Union. It was attended by enormous crowds. In the foreground is seen the Bismarck Monument. Labor orator holding forth to a great throng in Hyde Park, London on May 1st. Over his head flutters a red flag. The British government has viewed the approach of the day with considerable uneasiness, owing to general discontent among workmen. Labor's great demonstration in London, May 1st, the day that is traditionally given over to labor demonstrations. The parade, headed by ex-servicemen, is here seen leaving the Hyde Park embankment. The banner reading, 44 and no more, refers to the number of hours demanded as constituting a week's work. Fiery speeches were made by workmen's leaders, but there was nothing calling for police interference. House at Doorn, to which the ex-Kaiser has recently removed, after a stay of a year and a half at the castle of Count von Bentinck at Amerongen, Holland. The Doorn estate was purchased by the ex-Kaiser many months ago, but his removal to it has been deferred until certain changes could be made in the house and grounds. It is not an ostentatious dwelling, such as the royal fugitive has been accustomed to since birth, but rather resembles the home of a simple country gentleman. Care has been taken by the Dutch government to guard the estate and prevent any intrigues detrimental to Allied interests. Entrance to the former school for non-commissioned officers at Marienwerder, West Prussia, with Italian gendarmes on guard. The Italian flag flies before the building, which is now the headquarters of the Italian occupying forces. By the terms of the peace treaty, a plebiscite was to be taken in certain sections of West Prussia, where there is a large Polish as well as German population. The vote was to determine whether the region should be retained under German rule or be joined to Poland. To ensure a free vote, the Allies sent certain troops, including Italian forces, as seen in the accompanying pictures. They will police the districts during the taking of the vote. The necessity for their presence is proved by the intense agitation, accompanied by many outbreaks, that have occurred in the districts in question. Polish consular officials have been attacked by excited Germans, and have only escaped injury by the intervention of occupying forces. The plebiscite in certain of the disputed districts was to have occurred May 12th, but on May 4th it was determined at a conference of Allied ambassadors, presided over by Paul Cambon, to postpone the vote until July 12th. The vote will then be considered by the League of Nations, which has the final decision. In the plebiscite taken in the Schleswig districts, however, the vote was regarded as final, and it will probably be so treated in the West Prussian and Silesian districts. Italian troops drawn up for review in the Great Square at Marienwerder, capital of West Prussia. They are part of the occupying forces. Part of the fleet of submarine chasers lying at Port Newark, New Jersey, and ready for sale to any purchasers who may care to buy them, now that they are no longer needed for war purposes. Working Man's City on Wheels, owned by a logging company in the Pacific Northwest. This train of 11 cars can accommodate about 200 men. All the necessary facilities are installed, together with many comforts. Enormous crowds turned out in the Jewish quarter of New York City to pay their respects to David Kessler, the great Jewish actor and owner of one of the East Side theaters, who recently died. For many years, he has been one of the leading actors of his race. The crowd following the hearse was so dense that traffic was blocked. Preparing for the vast throngs of visitors who are expected to go to France this year to visit the graves of their dead. This rest house at the cemetery near St. Quentin, where many members of the 27th and 30th Divisions are buried, is a type of other houses at American military cemeteries. They are under the auspices of the YWCA, assisted by sympathetic French women. Police in Paris rushing to a point where a disturbance was in progress on May 1st. The disorders were not widely spread, nor did they result seriously, but the threat of them kept the police on the alert. Riot being checked at its beginning by Paris gendarmes. The fact that the railway strike began on the same day set for the labor parades complicated the situation, and strong police and military guards were posted at important points. L'Avenue de l'Opéra, usually one of the most crowded spots in Paris, as it appeared on the morning of May 1st, 1920. It was the day when the Great Labor Parade was to take place, and the air had been full of rumors of outbreaks and disorders. The police kept the streets clear as far as they could, and a great many people kept indoors to keep from being involved in possible trouble. While there were disturbances, they were, however, minor ones. Soldiers of the Yorkshire Regiment on patrol duty between Jerusalem and the Mount of Olives during Holy Week. The Easter season is always a perplexing one for the authorities in Jerusalem. The streets are crowded with pilgrims belonging to various religious sects that are animated by a strong feeling of hostility to each other. Outbreaks are frequent, and the ordinary police are not equal to coping with them. A Greek priest being searched for hidden arms. Even his calling does not exempt him from the precautionary measure. No feuds are so fierce as religious ones, and it has long been a cause of scandal to the Christian world that Greeks, Armenians, and Latins in Palestine are constantly at swords' points. Armed guards had to keep them apart, even under Turkish rule, and stern measures have to be adopted by the present British authorities. British and Indian troops guarding St. Stephen's Gate, Jerusalem. It is so named because St. Stephen was supposed to have been stoned there. The Arab motto at left reads, "Strength is in unity, and unity is obtained by wisdom." Interior of the beautiful amphitheater at Arlington National Cemetery, Washington, D.C., thronged with people on the occasion of its dedication to America's glorious dead, May 15, 1920. Bird's eye view of the marble amphitheater at Arlington, which was dedicated with impressive ceremonies May 15th. Addresses were made by Secretaries Baker and Daniels. Fire at Princeton University, which destroyed Marquand Chapel and Dickinson Hall and injured other buildings May 14th. Estimated loss is $300,000. Students helped firemen to extinguish the flames. Baseball is the American national game, but from recent developments in the sport, it may soon be more correct to call it the international game. Canada for many years has had members of the International League and the Toronto and Montreal teams class with the best in their circuit. Attempts have been made to introduce the game in England, but while it has aroused considerable interest, it has not yet supplanted cricket. In the Orient, however, especially in Japan, there is a very enthusiastic interest in the game, and some strong teams have been developed. The colleges there have played it for some years, and there are excellent nines in the universities of Keio and Waseda. Now other teams outside the colleges are becoming interested, and nines have been formed in the leading cities of Japan. Games are often played with American teams from the U.S. naval vessels temporarily in port, and this affords good practice for the Japanese players. When the Chicago and All-American teams made their journey around the world, they played some good games with the Japanese, and although naturally they won, they were given stiff opposition. Photo caption. The 9 here shown may incline one to the belief that Japan is going to regulate her national sport of wrestling to second place and install baseball in its stead. For all the members of this 9 are famous wrestlers of Japan, and still wear the top knot that indicated their calling, a fact that has won for them the sobriquet of the top knot team. They are heavy men, weighing from 200 pounds up, but considering their weight, they get around the bases with surprising agility. The quickness of eye demanded by wrestling makes them expert in judging the ball that comes from the pitcher's hand, and when they lean against the ball, it goes fast and far. One of the members of the Japanese Top Knot 9, so called because it is made up entirely of well-known wrestlers who still retain their top knots. The 9 has its headquarters in Tokyo, and has a large following, not only because it plays good ball, but because the wrestlers who compose it are old-time favorites. Their old athletic training stands them in good stead. Mr. Oka, chief of the Metropolitan Police Force of Tokyo, Japan, throwing in the first ball at a recent game in that city. There is great enthusiasm for the game in Japan, and many of the games are close and exciting. The rules in force are the same as in this country. Some excellent teams are being developed. Tent City Colony at Newark, New Jersey that has been established for homeless families under the direction of the municipal authorities, who have appropriated $25,000 for the purpose. The tents are being put up with amazing celerity by men who have had experience in the army. In order to help families that are unable to obtain apartments in the city of Berlin, Germany has erected barracks on vacant space that was formerly used as drilling grounds. Although a great contrast to the large buildings in the background, they are sanitary and comfortable. Denmark, in common with all European countries, is suffering from a shortage of dwelling houses. It has thrown open the jail at Copenhagen for temporarily homeless families. End of the famous Richmond of Civil War fame, which was burned May 13th at Eastport, Maine. She was built 62 years ago at Norfolk, Virginia. During the Civil War, she won fame in Farragut's squadron in the attack on New Orleans. She was 225 feet long, 43 feet wide, and 17 feet deep, and when she was a full-rigged warship, was equipped with 16 boilers. For many years, she had been laid up in the Delaware River and was recently sold to be destroyed for the purpose of securing the copper and other metals in her. She is here shown being burned on the beach at Eastport. The last man to leave the ship was Captain Turner, who can be seen at the stern hauling down the flag. Young athlete of the United States Marine Corps, Ray Wilson, beginning a long jaunt across the continent. A firing squad of 4 Marines is shown, ready to start him on his trip. He carries letters to the governors of states he will cross. His run will end in New York. Long-distance walker Joseph F. Mitkulin, who set out from his home in Croatia to walk around the world. He has now been walking for 18 years and a half, crossed 26 nations, and traveled 107,000 miles. In his book, here shown, he has pictures given him by the Prince of Wales, President Wilson, the President of China, and other celebrities. Rifle squads of the New York Police marching on Fifth Avenue in their annual parade, which this year took place on May 15th. The street was crowded to the curb with spectators, and admiration was freely expressed of the excellent marching and soldierly appearance of the men. Impressive view of the Great Police Parade looking up Fifth Avenue from 22nd Street. The playing of many bands enlivened the march, which was led by Mayor Hyland, Commissioner Enright, and other prominent city officials. For once, the weather was propitious, and the parade was one of the most successful ever held in the city. Annual rowing regatta recently held on the Grand Canal of Venice, Italy. It was the first that had taken place since the beginning of the war. The occasion was a gala one. A unique and picturesque scene that could only take place in Venice, the Queen City of the Adriatic. The decorated gondola here shown was one of the contestants in the gondola race. Finish of the varsity race at Princeton on Carnegie Lake, May 15th. Cornell was the winner and is here seen leading the race, with Princeton a half length behind and Yale a poor third. The time for the winner was 9 minutes 16 seconds. The Cornell freshman crew also scored a victory in its event. Pageant staged at Fordham University, New York, May 15th, representing Joan of Arc on her way to the coronation of Charles VII at Rheims. Martyrdom of Joan of Arc at the stake as shown in the pageant at Fordham University. 10,000 took part in the pageant, and 25,000 witnessed this representation of one of the most tragic events in history. Great throngs gathered on May 15th about the equestrian statue of Joan of Arc on Riverside Drive in Upper New York in honor of her canonization, which took place on the following day at St. Peter's in Rome. The statue was garlanded with flowers, and the crowd joined with a will in singing the Marseillaise in honor of the heroic Maid of Orleans, who crowned a French king and led his armies to victories. The canonization of Joan of Arc by the Pope on May 16th in Rome was celebrated the preceding day all over the world. New York's ceremonies were conducted at the Joan of Arc statue on Riverside Drive. Opening of the new $10 million Michigan Avenue Bridge in Chicago. In the accompanying pictures, the bridge is shown just prior to being lowered into position and as the completed structure. It is 20 years since the bridge was begun, but lawsuits, war, steel shortages, and labor troubles have held up the construction. Over 10,000 automobiles gaily decorated with flags and flowers crossed the bridge after it was declared open by Mayor Thompson.